Hi, Rahul. And this is the third episode of Second Innings. And in this podcast, I actually want to explore or talk to people or explore the minds of people who have transitioned from one particular career to another. The careers could be related, could be unrelated. And
Mm,
because as the times have changed, like there were times when earlier people would be in one particular career and they would retire from those careers, and now
mm,
we see that every few years the systems itself are changing,
yeah,
the environment is changing. And for that, people like generally I or the shift in the phases of life causes people to learn more, shift in career. So all those things,
mm,
because of those things, I would love to explore this phenomena of what happens when you are changing a career and how
nice.
to successfully make that transition without hitting the roadblocks, because you have done it, and you have done it much before now. Okay, you have done it since
Yeah,
the last 20 years. So
yeah.
Rahul is a hypnosis and an NLP coach at present, and he has founded iHypnosis. And over the last 20 years, although he's an MBA and has had a career in advertising, and he has successfully transitioned from that to being a coach. And so I would love to explore the whole transition, the whole journey.
Mm.
So, hi Rahul, welcome to Second Innings. And
Thank
could
you. Thank
you,
you for having me here
yeah, and would
at your
you
Kavita.
just briefly explain your trajectory for the
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
audience?
definitely. So,
Yeah.
first things first, big thank you to you for reaching out and asking me to be on your show. And, if you believe in the power of numbers, it's lucky number three. So, wishing, many, many episodes and so much more success to you in the coming days.
Thank you.
When we talk about second innings, and when we had this conversation sometime back, when you had said, at some point I'll reach out and we'll, I'd love to have you on the show. I was like, definitely, because um, being able to make switches in career, especially today, post COVID, is not only a fascinating and an enticing prospect, but it also comes with its fair share of uh, you know the hits and misses, as we say, right? So
Yes.
I'm also curious to see where this conversation will go today. But to put this into context, right, as you
Yeah.
said, today I'm here. My brand is called iHypnosis, and to me, what I do is a combination, is a blend of both hypnosis and NLP, or neuro linguistic programming. And this
Program.
is something that I have been building over, literally, I think, the last 17 or 18 years. And of course, there have been a few or many experiments along the way to arrive at this formula of the blend of these two truly amazing, subjects. If time permits, maybe we'll talk a little bit about it. But like I said, I want
Yes.
to also talk primarily about that shift of, transitioning from one to another career. So that's definitely something that I'm sure will help your listeners and people who are tuning into this.
Yeah.
So, going back in time, this is
Mm-hmm.
literally like the late 90s. I had done my MBA in marketing
Mm-hmm.
because my intention was to get into advertising. And so I did that. So it was like living the dream, so to speak. Right? I was in Joseph's, and this is, as I said, it was like the very early days of Joseph's rolling out an MBA program. So I did that, and then I went on to work in some very prolific agencies at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I was in Bozell, Ma Bozell, which of course I joined just after they had kind of hit their peak. So that was a very interesting experience. And then of course I realized that, okay, if I really want to do this, I really want to, live my dream, my passion, something that I'm really, that I believe in. Bombay is the place. And
Mm-hmm.
for those of you who may or may not know this, that advertising, like even back then, they used to say like Bombay was the mecca of advertising. That was something I had heard growing up. So that had
Mm-hmm.
somehow stuck in my head, and I said, okay, if I'm anyway working 14, 16 hours a day, in Bangalore, I might as well take, time is the same, it's 24 hours every day wherever you go. So I said I might as well, um, work at a bigger scale. And so I did that, and I
Mm-hmm.
was very, very blessed, very fortunate to have worked on some really, really big campaigns. I
Projects.
worked with
Mm-hmm.
like literally like big brands were launching. In fact, interestingly, one of them, my main brand that I helped promote was Rediff.com. This is, I'm talking
Oh
like
wow.
literally
Yeah,
1999,
yeah.
right?
The
So
in beginning,
all
beginning.
exactly all those ads that you
Yeah.
would see on a Sunday, all the billboards, that was all part of my, what I would do at that point. Uh, so I literally like did something that was out of my comfort zone because I'd never, uh, even though I come from an army background, I'd never lived on my own. I never lived in a hostel. So it was
Mm-hmm.
always like, I was with family. And this was that time when I chose to go out and test my, the untested or uncharted waters. And I'm glad I did it. That was on for like 3 years. But interestingly, that taught me what I didn't want. And
Okay.
I suspect that is a very like if someone was like, hey, that happened to you like 20 plus years ago, how's that relevant to me? I suspect
Mm-hmm.
that even today, 20, 25 years later, um, for a lot of people, there's that feeling of, oh, okay, I don't want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe I can do that. This versus that is a very common frame. And I can tell you from my experience, I'm glad I did it because it
Mm-hmm.
shaped my perspective on taking risk, on being willing to to follow my heart or my intuition. And of course, now in 2024, these are things that we recognize more. These are things that people actually talk about, right? Intuition, your gut, follow your your purpose or find your purpose. Like these are things that today in 2024, it's not just fashionable, it is an acknowledged thing. It's not seen as, oh, tu pagal ho gaya hai, like why are you doing that? Yes, you will have people who will, out of fear and love, tell you, don't leave that job, or
Mm-hmm.
stay safe, stay small but stay safe, right? But if you're right now at that point in your life where you're kind of toying with that idea of, you're playing with that idea of, maybe I can do something,
Something
you
else.
know something else, right? And that's the thing, it's like we all have that common, it could be a sound, it's like as if there's this voice inside us that's saying, no, no, do it, like, test it out, at least experiment, at least experience it. What's the worst that'll happen? If you don't like
Mm-hmm.
it, you will, at least you would have tested it and you're like, okay, I don't want to do that, so therefore what? And interestingly, that was my experience. So I did that stint in Bombay, and I realized that because I had sort of put myself in the deep end, I was like, okay, I want to do more things, but not this, right? And so that
But
was
did you
like the next
enjoy
phase.
when you were in that? Did you enjoy? Did you
100%.
like it?
So
Did you
let me
like it?
answer it like this: I enjoyed it until I didn't. So I
Okay.
enjoyed the long hours, the living in a different city, living in a hostel. And at one point I had like a roomie who had joined me from Bangalore. A lot of these things that I had never experienced in my life, I absolutely enjoyed them. I loved it. I got to learn a lot. I got to work on bigger projects. So even if you're 20 something, or you're 30 something, or even if you're 40 something today, or for that matter even 50 something, if you're right now in that point of, should I explore, do it,
Mm.
right? What's that line?
Yeah.
You have only one life to live, so do it.
And so the point of me asking that question was like, there are this thing, okay, there are some people who really don't like what they do, and they are
Hmm.
exploring something, okay,
Hmm.
and there are some people who really enjoy what they're doing, but then they want something more, which is not
Right.
being satisfied by that particular
Correct.
what to say,
Correct.
place they are in, right? So I just wanted to
Hmm.
find out what was your zone like.
Yeah. I will definitely say I belong to more of the first camp, which
Hmm.
is, um, there's something more out there, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is, and so let me put this into context. In that 3 year period, I did explore, going to different agencies, because something
Mhm.
wasn't, it's like something was missing. That was the theme, right? I would
Mhm.
work maybe 6 months or a year. And of course, advertising is a pretty high burn uh, kind of career, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you kind of either you will stay on in that agency or you'll move on to a next, right? Like in today's day and age, advertising, events, like these are places where a lot of times people will sort of move around until you find the agency, the place, maybe the culture. In my case, it was like something deeper than that, and I was like, nah, there's something missing, right? The other is where, of course, you're like not satisfied. You're like, let me try,
Mm-hmm.
let me try, let me try. Honestly, there's no judgment because
Yeah,
nobody knows
anything.
when you're going to find that thing,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So that was that initial phase of that was like phase one of like
Mm-hmm.
it was or let's say avatar one, which was
Mm-hmm.
advertising. And then, of course, I moved on from advertising to something that I always loved doing, which is theater. So ever
Oh,
since,
okay.
like from way back, it's like in school, you'd always have that one friend who was in the school play, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was that
Yes.
friend. So every year there would be, some annual play or something. I was always that person that that enjoyed being in the play. So when I was reflecting and thinking, ki, okay, if not advertising, then what? This
Mm-hmm.
kept coming back to me. Ki, I used to absolutely love being on stage. Now,
Theater.
my interpretation of stage was being in a play,
Yeah.
being in theater, in simple terms.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of was probably one of the riskiest moves I've made because
Okay.
from working in advertising, which was high risk, high burn, but obviously, it comes with its perks. And like if you're in it long enough, your people on your speed dial are all the directors, all the movie
Mm-hmm.
stars. Like for someone who's worked 10, 12, 15 years in advertising, they will know people on a first name basis, and
Mm-hmm.
probably a tenth of them will be their friends, right? Because
Okay.
it's pretty much in the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
And so instead of that, I chose to go a different path, which was
So
again
how
linking
long
into
did you
the.
work in advertising?
I did
How
about
long
three and a
did you
half
work?
years, three and a half
Oh,
years.
okay. Quite long.
And in those days, it was like I had kind of seen what the path was. I said, I can't see myself doing this for another 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I could feel the drudgery because I had understood the working of it. The rest of it is practice, like no two ways about it. Like any of the processes, any of the skills, whether it's selling, whether it's managing the account or whatever, there's still skills required, no two ways
Yes.
about it. But I knew what the pieces were, what
Mm-hmm.
the elements of the recipe were. So I was like, that doesn't excite me, that doesn't make me feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, not this. So then what? And that's where theater came into play. And I said, okay, uh, what can I do with this? And it was just time and place. My seniors from college, incidentally, had also walked that path before me. So in a way, it was like, oh, okay, they're doing this. Maybe I can do this, right? So that kind of
Mm-hmm.
led me more. And strangely enough, now even as I'm speaking to you, I've just kind of made that connection. More than the theater, it was recognizing that there was an element of teaching that I had never
Mm-hmm.
thought about earlier. Like I had never seen myself. Like some kids will be the teacher in the group. I was never
Mm-hmm.
that person. I was never that kid. But here, interestingly, in my late 20s, I suddenly started to recognize that, oh, okay, I actually like this. I like the idea of um, you know teaching somebody something that I know, right? And so I was like, okay, let me explore this, and that kind of started the whole process of so when you talk about second innings, it's like you never know what skills you're going to discover which are already there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because in teaching, a large part of a really good teacher will listen. A really good teacher will encourage and engage. And lastly, and this is something that now today we use this term very sort of a lot more, which is a very good teacher will also hold that space,
Space. Huh?
right? Like today
Yeah.
we hear these words a lot more. So as I look back now, like 20 some years ago, it's like the realization also is that these are some of the skills that I discovered because I was willing to to risk it, because I was willing to do something that was so, like, absolutely left field, like completely way off, like nobody was doing it at that point, right? I mean, if
And
you look at the Indian population, is like a small tiny fraction. Go ahead.
so was it like you, what to say? Did you jump, or were you also two timing or trying to test while you
No,
were
I've
in
I've always
advertising?
been the deep
Risk
diving
taker?
kind of person. I I thought about it at that time, but somehow I couldn't. It's like that expression. I couldn't see myself doing the let me do this and side may like today, even today, okay, even like 5 years ago when they would talk about like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
side
yeah.
hustle, I
Mm-hmm.
somehow I struggle with that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I find it hard to say I'll do this and that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make me happy. Like there are some people who can do it beautifully, right? And that's a skill in itself, right? At
Mm-hmm.
least so far, I've not really been able to. I I won't say I have a strong track record of being able to do like two parallel, two different things at the same time. Uh,
Okay.
so
So then you
maybe
jumped
that's
into
part of
theater.
exactly. So I was like,
Okay.
okay, let's do it. I've anyway. So it's like I remember telling um, one of my friends, I was like, okay, I know what I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to figure out what I want.
What you want.
As as scary and as crazy as that sounds, because again, I'm not recommending it to everybody. Meaning,
Mm.
if that aligns with you, then sure, definitely do it. But otherwise, it's not uh, it's not to use that expression, it's not a bed of roses, right? There's a
Mm.
lot of heartache, heartburn, a lot of sleepless nights that come with it, and I had
Yeah,
them,
and also
right?
it's a systemic kind of a choice, right? You have to see what's around you as a system or in your environment, whether
Correct.
that decision really affects other people
Yes.
or it affects
Yes.
only you. That
Correct.
kind of decision,
Exactly.
where you at that point where you were deciding just because, like you made that
It was
decision
just for me.
because you saw, yeah,
At
it was
that
for
point,
you,
it was just for me,
for you.
right? So that
Yes,
may not
yes.
be, say, people who are listening to
The
this or
same
watching
case
this,
for others.
it may
Yeah.
not be the same. Even then, I remember, like way back, even then, I remember telling people that I'm not recommending this.
Hmm.
For me, it was the way to go. That was sort of like the push that I needed, or the actually, not even push. It was that was what felt natural. That, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I may crash and burn, but I'd rather do that than,
Hmm.
like test two things at the same time, right? I mean, it is definitely admirable for what it's worth if someone's able to hold a job and
And do
uh,
something else.
start a side business kind of thing. I mean, that's like hats off to people who are able to do it and able to do it successfully, which means they're able to maintain one and also, you know, parallelly like build out the second career
And
or
how
the
long
parallel
was
career.
theater? How long did
So
you
I did.
explore
So yeah. So that was like I started in 2005, and
theater?
I continued till like the final, which would have been around maybe about 10. I should say 10 to 12 years of that avatar, right?
Oh,
And to
wow.
put this into
Okay.
context, that version of what I did was using theater in a corporate context. So,
Mm-hmm.
in simple terms, it's like corporate training. In those days, there's no
Achha.
concept of coaching
Okay.
yet. As
Mm-hmm.
today, when we talk about, like they say today, you say
Yeah, yeah,
coaching,
yeah.
and you, depending on which pool you're in, right, what your social media feed is. Like people who are watching this probably are already somewhere on that journey of coaching,
Mm-hmm.
so they will be very familiar with the concepts. But back then, the world of coaching didn't exist yet.
Exist. Yeah.
So training was really what was there. There was typically the corporate training, but even there, I chose to go a slightly different, sort of like the Hatke route, which was
Mm-hmm.
using theater. So it was experiential learning,
Mm-hmm.
using theater as a way to engage audiences, as a way to, and this was like literally from the, let's say, the core, management team of like the large MNCs, to even, your entry level to the mid management. So I've worked across, like I would say at last count it was somewhere between 10 and 15,000 over those 10-12 years of working with people, right? So
Okay. And
it
what
was
were you
different.
teaching?
Sorry, what was I?
What was the topic of training?
Correct.
Like
So it
what would you?
was, interestingly enough, no surprise, it was human development. It
Okay.
was everything to do with, like, today what we call personal development. You talk about, let's say, leadership, conflict
Mhm.
management, change management, um, you know, and then of course self-awareness. Like in those days, EQ was sort of like the hot button, right?
Yes.
Emotional quotient. So those were sort of like the themes that I used, and I blended it into theater. So for me, that was what made me feel really alive, and it was amazing, and people loved it. And again, it was like a journey. It was like, that avatar continued up to the point where there was juice in it. And then interestingly, that led me to the next phase, which is, what now has been these last, I guess, maybe about 10 years of this pure focus on, NLP and then hypnosis. And today, of course, it's the blend. So it's
Yeah.
like
And
three broad stages.
even back then, I think you were. I think so. You have this pattern of trying to blend two or more things
Oh, yeah, yeah.
together, right? There, that time
Absolutely.
also you had
Absolutely.
theater and personal development or training or
Correct.
coaching
Correct.
together,
Correct.
and yeah. So that seems to be a thing with
Yeah,
you, right? You're trying to match or uh, have two
that's just
things
me.
together.
I I
Because,
I like to sort of like draw the best of, and
yeah.
it's just part of my natural sort of flair, if you want to call it. That's my style, right? That, like, take a little bit from here, take a little bit from there, and offer it to people in a way where they really get something. They have an experience, So,
And was this decision? How do you remember this? Is it like a
mhm.
feeling that you had continuously for a few months, few years, or was it
Mm,
like one fine day you just thought this is it? No more advertising. I'm going into theater.
mm.
How was that?
That's a beautiful question, very powerful question, and I'm sure folks who are on that journey now would experience it. There is that one sort of moment, right? So I remember there was this one just around my birthday. This is like way back 2002 in August, and I clearly remember that sort of like that fulcrum incident. Like, okay, I'm going
Mhm.
back, right? So I actually was, told my roomie. He came out of the shower, and I was like, hey, I've been thinking. And he knew. I mean, I had, like, looked at, maybe if I change my job, maybe that will solve the problem, right?
Mhm.
But somehow it didn't take care of it fully. So finally I was like, okay, there was that one. I was like, okay, now I know it's time, right? So for me, I have this internal, like, I can hear my voice saying this to me. It's like, let's do this, or it's time, right? So for me, that was the experience, that I was like, okay, there's that one moment. But to answer your question, it was definitely a build up. Like, every time I worked on something, some things clicked, some things didn't feel aligned. And that
Mhm.
that that feeling of un or non alignment is what is something that has always happened. Like, it has grown over a period of time, and then I get to that point where I'm like, I can't do this to me, because if I can't, if I can't take care of me, there's no way I can take care of other people. There's no way I can be of use to other people,
How do you
right?
describe this feeling? How would you describe this for somebody who
So
is
that's what I'm
not
saying. It's
very not aware of the word aligned? Like, what does it even mean? Kind of
Yeah. So in
thing.
simple
How
terms,
would you
it's like,
describe
if
it?
you feel physically sick with the work that you're doing, if you feel, excessively stressed over and over and over again, right? And you're sort of like pushing yourself to work.
Mm.
People do it. Again, I'm no one to, it's not my place to judge, or, like, point fingers. But in simple terms, for me, since you asked the question, it's like, for me, it was definitely a physical feeling. Like, it's like, the way I look at it, it's like, the moment it went from excitement to drudging, and to, like, grudgingly go to work, right? You see, okay, you have a fight with somebody or a disagreement in a work context. That's one thing. It's sort of situational. But if it's like the quality of work or the type of work starts
Mhm.
to kind of chip away, right? For me, that's what I started to feel, because I loved doing it until I didn't. And when it started to not be as much, I started I even back then, by the way. Today, of course, we have more sophisticated ways of testing, but way back then
Mhm.
also, I asked myself these questions, right? Like, what are the pros and cons of staying versus going, right? Of leaving this or continuing on in this space, right? And I still remember, I'm sure that website is down by now, but years ago, uh, and this is like very early days of the internet and Google and whatever. Oh, in fact, it was even pre-Google.
Pre-Google.
Uh, it was pre-Google, right? So
Yes.
I found this Canadian site which had this very in-depth. It was literally like some university or some organization had uploaded their entire assessment test, right?
Mhm.
So it's like saying, what do you like, what are you good at, and what do you like, and then you try to
Okay.
blend the two, right?
Mhm.
Which is what a
Mhm.
lot of assessments do today, right? What are you good at? And of course, in the more recent ish or recent test way of saying it, today we talk about ikigai,
Mhm.
right? There are the four quadrants basically, right? And that
Yes.
middle, the sweet spot, is where you enjoy it, people benefit from it, people pay for it, and because there's a demand and people are willing to pay for it, that is like, that's heaven, right? And we're
Mhm.
all in some form striving towards that. One way of saying it is we're looking at to do that from the context of our funnel, let's say, right?
Mhm.
In a very sort of micro way. But zooming way back out, as you said, that was the common thread. That okay, there's some, like a mishap at work, or something doesn't happen, or a project goes bad, or whatever. That's like, you can chalk it down to think it was just that. But when it
Mhm.
starts to repeat, and for me, I've always been very mindful of that. The moment it starts
Mhm.
to repeat, I'm like, something's missing, something's not right. And I've that way been very like frank and brutal with myself. I can't. Nay, it's okay, it will take care of itself, and it's okay, it's just a job. That's something I've never been able to do, right? Like, for
Mhm.
some people, that's the antidote, where you say it's okay, it's just a job, right?
Mhm.
And I'll get my kicks from everything else, right? Like, it
Yes.
it pays the bills, gives me a little bit more. In today's day and age, I can travel, on my credit
Mhm.
card or whatever, to have fun, to explore the world. And my job, sort of is that stable factor, and that works for some people, and that's perfectly, like, it's like when we talk about transition, those are probably, I wouldn't say those are not the people, those are the people who are not yet in that space of, okay, now it's time to move, meaning that they have kind of arrived at a midpoint where they're able to go to work regardless, right? But
Mhm.
I've from the get-go never been that kind of person. And like I said, I'm also talking from a very long time ago, where most people dreamt of it, but very few did it,
Mhm.
right? In those
Yeah.
days, we would talk about things like your passion,
Mhm.
right? Find your
And
passion.
accessibility also, if I would want to say, now
100%.
it's like, just to put it very crudely, it is at the touch of a
Hmm.
button. Like whatever you want to
Yes,
learn is at the touch of a button. That time
that's
you had
right.
to really go find out, and find,
Yeah,
like, sometimes you wouldn't, like, if something really hit you, like, oh, this
yeah,
existed, I didn't even know about
yeah,
it, that
yeah,
kind of
yeah. Yeah,
zone it
just
was,
to put
right?
this into context for you, like what you're saying right now is reminding me a lot of those like, scenes. I didn't stop at the online as well.
Hmm.
Like, through, like, I asked my mom, because she's been a teacher, and people who I knew, uh, like, through them and through her and her connects, I like, if there was somebody who was doing like a education psychologist, or people who
Mhm.
were in the field. So I think
Mhm.
somewhere that's also part of my nature, which is okay, find the person that's doing like like today, the cool kids say a hella good job, right? Like, somebody who's really
Mhm.
doing an amazing job of, in this case, helping people figure out, what work do you really want to do. So I actually went and I spoke to education psychologists, these what do you call them, the career development, not
Mhm.
coaches back then, but they were
Mhm.
career development counselors, let's say, right?
Mhm.
So I've done all of that as well. And but it's still, it takes work, because for a lot of people it's like you get that thing, and then you're like, to hell with it, I'll manage,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And
mean,
did
that's
you?
just.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So did you ever give yourself, like when we do these things, sometimes we
Hmm.
we say, right, this is a new path that I'm trying to explore. So did you give
Hmm.
yourself a time and say, "Ki if it doesn't work in, say, like 5 years, 2 years, whatever be that thing, and that I would get back to what I'm already doing, which I know for sure that
Great
I'm good
question.
at and pays my bills." Yeah.
Great question. That's one of my, I guess you can call it, traits. I kind of, and maybe it's something that I now, as great questions, by the way, now as I'm connecting it back, um, I kind of believed I was more in the camp of burn your bridges,
Okay.
right? Which in simple terms, I mean, again, this is probably my growing up, my mom was an English teacher. Like, these are some of the phrases I've heard growing up, right? So in simple terms, what that means is you go forward.
Hmm.
When you say burn your bridges, basically, like, you're not giving yourself, oh, if this doesn't happen, then I'll go back to that. I was like,
Hmm.
it's always been like an all or nothing kind of an approach. That's mine. And again, like I said, there are pluses and minuses of that. Like, if you ask my mom, if you ask my wife, they will give you another perspective. It's not good,
Yeah.
bad, right, wrong. It's just
And
we're all
yeah,
made
and
up of
in
these
doing these interviews also, I'm realizing it's like everybody's own journey is how they
yes,
have chosen to do it. There is
100%.
absolutely
Yeah,
no right or wrong, you know.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
thank you. Yeah, you were talking
So
about
yeah,
another.
so like I said, the for me, I've always sort of approached it from a, let's do this,
Yeah.
right? And
Like, and
then,
let's
you
give
know
it 100% and not
give it
think about
100%.
what is, yeah.
Exactly. So I don't. So that can also be a flaw. But for me, if I look back at the last 25 years, that is what is sort of like part of what makes me me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I so in simple words, it's like, giving of myself fully to the process, right? There will be ups and downs in that. There will be, days of like intense energy. There'll be days of like, okay, I need to just like chill out, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if I zoom out and I look at the last so many years, I know that in its entirety is what has also brought me here, in the context of being the professional, in the context of being able to hold that space for somebody else who's on the journey,
Mm-hmm.
you know
Yeah.
so
And
yeah. Mhm,
in this whole journey, like when you are doing something new, right?
mhm.
uh, what kind of resources, both internal and external?
Great
Like, one,
question.
you already mentioned that you used to connect with people, okay,
Yeah,
and ask them or find out more from them, right? That is
yeah,
one
yeah.
aspect of it.
Oh yeah.
What other things did you explore? Yeah.
Beautiful question. So at one point, there's a standing joke in the, especially the early days, where pretty much every part of Bangalore I have gone and met people before I got into, let's say, counseling. So I did a course in counseling. Before
Mm-hmm.
that, the question was, should I study or should I join? This is post advertising. Should I
Mm-hmm.
join an HR company? So I
Mm-hmm.
met a couple of HR people, pretty senior, some
Mm-hmm.
a general manager of some hotel, like different kinds of people who my intention was like literally, like, let me find out what these people do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In a way, now if I look back, it was probably also gauging to see, are they happy?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're doing what they're doing. They're doing what I am sort of intending to do, but are they happy doing that? Right? So that was sort of like a measure. So coming back to your question, which is, in simple terms, it's like, one is, yes, having a network, having the when I say resources, it could be, and today it's very different, like literally from the chat GPT option to talking to people, to just putting it on LinkedIn, or I mean, uh, network per se has just like mushroom like crazy today, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there are enough and more places where you can get that resource. So that's one. The second part is, of course, like I said, um, for me, the all or nothing definitely helped. So there was no hesitation in the, or even if there was a moment of, let's say, a rejection, um, it was temporary, because I was like, no, I really want to do this. So if not this person, then somebody else, right? So that has sort of like
mm,
what has fueled me, and more from an internal perspective, like that inner desire, want to keep going, to make it
mhm,
work, right? Because I really believe in this. See, that's the other part, right? um, it wasn't sort of like a flight of fancy, like, chalo, let me do this because this is like the
mm,
latest thing. It's always come from a much deeper place. So that's why in my case, whether it was theater, which I've done, like, for, if I look back in time, right through my school years, so it was over a decade of doing something that made me feel alive, like preparing for
mm,
a play and then doing the play and then enjoying the, the audience's reaction, and enjoying the process of putting the play together, and then, you know pulling it down again because the play is over, and then you move on to life and then the next project that's happened. So in simple terms, I'm saying these are some of the inner, the inner resources that I've tapped into. External, like I was sharing with you, it's very important, if you want to do anything like this, any kind of transition, that you have people around you that you really connect with, and they can come in any number of forms, right? Some of us, I would say, like, I've been very fortunate. My mom has always been a, like one of my biggest supporters. My wife and I met when we were in school, and
mhm,
we were in, we've known each other through college. So today it's like, 25, 30 years later, it's like mom and my wife, like, these are two people who have really been there, supporting me through, like, the highs, the lows, the thick, the thin. When my ideas were like way ahead of its time, to now where it's sort of like that investment of time, money, belief, all of that is now, it's starting to, the compounding effect, right? I see it more, right? And I
mm,
know that for me, this is just the beginning. Like, what I'm doing, as I'm doing it now even more, I know that some version of this will continue on for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, literally for the rest of my life. Because for
yes,
me, that belief and therefore following through on it is what has kind of connected me to what I love doing, right? So if I zoom out for a second and say, okay, what can someone learn from this?
mhm,
um, it's asking those questions. Like, I've always asked myself those questions. The moment I may not ask somebody out loud, like, some people are very comfortable or confident to ask that sort of, like, look stupid kind of question to somebody outside, right? For me, I've always done that internally, right? I've always, and one part of that is noticing when you're not really in it,
mm,
you know whether it's a
mhm,
relationship, whether it's, career. In this case, since we're talking about, like, on the pod, it's like, when we're talking about in the context of career, it's like, the moment you start to feel there's something off, I would say, from my learning, it's like, I've always paid attention. I may have momentarily tried to distract myself, but I'm like, if this is repeating, there's something off,
mm.
you know that has really helped.
And just to add to that,
Hmm. Hmm.
what did you believe about yourself that you could successfully, make these shifts?
Mm.
What was it
Oh, that's a
inside of you?
powerful
What did
question.
you believe
Powerful
about
question.
yourself?
Yeah. I think that's, if I make the connection back, that belief in myself is something that, let me say it like this. It's like, they say, don't stop believing,
Mm-hmm,
right? Like, there's that expression, right? Like, don't stop believing. For me, that is definitely something that has just sort of been there, intrinsically. So that sense of self belief, right?
mm-hmm,
Um, yes, along the way, when I'm exploring something and I'm feeling lost, or I don't know what the path is, like, for a lot of us, there have been enough and more moments when I felt lost. But deep down, it's like the core is always that, I'm on the path. The question of what is the path, how am I going to find the path, it's only those moments when I would get lost or feel like stuck, right? And which is also why in today's day and age, coaching really has a very, very important role to play, right? For people who really want to explore, it's like, if you want to be an explorer, you need a guide, right? That's like, it's
mm-hmm.
always been there, right? Even in
And
nature, you
also,
want to.
yeah, and also because these things do not have a set path, like we were discussing before
Exactly.
before we,
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
podcast, that
Yeah.
There are certain, obviously, the conventional careers have a path. Everybody
Correct.
knows, like from A to B, how
Correct.
to go, where to go, what to do.
Correct.
But then
Correct.
this is one journey where everybody is finding their own paths. Maybe a few years down the line, there could be something, but at least now I still feel people are,
Yeah.
everybody is figuring out as they
Correct.
go,
Yeah.
or obviously, like you correctly or rightfully said, that you need to hold hands with somebody who's maybe, you don't even need somebody who has done that journey. You need somebody just who is ahead of you in that, in that
And somebody
place.
who will hold that space, and whole part of holding that space is silence.
Hmm.
Like, I've had some really amazing teachers and mentors over the years who have, like we were talking before the pod, I've, like, these are the two modalities that have really stuck with me. Like, they've really, like, connected with me, right? When we talk about hypnosis and NLP. But there are many that I have explored over the years. And again, these were, in today's day and age, modalities as we call them. These were techniques or methods or whatever that were way ahead of their time, meaning that it was like it wasn't as loud as it is today when you talk about, say, law of attraction and things like that. I'm talking like 15, 18 years ago, where there very few people would have heard of The Secret, or people who had gone on to not only hear about it but go and certify and then start teaching,
Hmm.
right? So these were the kind of people that I had come across way back then. And all of that definitely helped me on this journey of, becoming clearer, uh, really like connecting to what I'm meant to be doing, and also the how do I, help other people. Because it's like the intention is, yes, I want to help people. And for a lot of people, I'm sure, who are listening, it's like, heart of hearts, they want to help people, but right now they're probably at a point where they don't know yet exactly how to do it,
Hmm.
right? They don't, as you said, they don't have that route map, or that blueprint of how do you do it exactly, right? And
Correct.
that is the journey. Like, when you keep doing it, you will find, oh yeah, I can do it like this and I can do it like that. And together, that combination is what actually helps people, because that's the feedback that I'm getting. People are telling me that, wow, you did this and it just shifted something for me, right?
And
So yeah.
yeah, what modalities, what all have you done? I know you have done a lot. So
So
if you want to
let me see
list it,
the
describe
few that I
it.
can remember offhand, right? So the one way to explain it is, or to sort of like connect it, is there's the Eastern and the Western, right?
Yeah.
So the Eastern is, Reiki, body work. Body work technically is more sort of North American, as in, the Native American.
Hmm.
But I'm talking more in spiritual versus a little more sort of logical, rational way of, like, I consider NLP to be more sort of coding, which is more sort of, as I look at it, as a comparison, like hypnosis is more right brain, NLP is a little
Hmm.
more left brain. Like, we label things, and you're like, there's a very, okay, you have this, you use this. Hypnosis is more of sort of, you just go in, and it's like spirit takes over. And I mean, that's how I approach it, right? So I've that's why the blend is more in a spiritual way. So coming back to your question, so there's NLP, Reiki, body work, uh, there's intuition. So there are workshops like dime a dozen in terms of, like these different ways to sort of awaken myself.
Law of
What else was
attraction.
there?
Law of
Law of
attraction.
attraction was
That
definitely
that
part of
is
that
one I
list,
know.
right?
Yeah.
Then there was a little more sort of left brainish, which was, in those days, it was, what is the expression? Um, what is it called? Life skills, right? So
Hmm.
that was more sort of like a broad way of looking at it. Counseling, right? And of course, when I started all of this, I had I focused on my degree in psychology, so it kind of
Hmm.
came from there, which was more sort of a Western approach, which was more sort of theory based. And then, in the years when I came back and I had, gone past advertising, and I was like, I really want to figure out what, like, I want to know myself better, also not just for myself, but I want to be able to help other people, right?
Hmm.
So that was what sort of started this whole 15, 18-year journey of every process that I went through, every process that I learned. And of course, many coaches over the years, like Tony Robbins over the years, then of course Richard Bandler, when we talk about NLP, Dr. Richard Bandler, who's the co-founder of NLP. So those are
NLP.
things that, like, from way back, I would say from 2007 onwards, that started off, and then quite deeply since 2012. So it's about
Mhm.
12 years now, right? So yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. Uh, then you might remember, now of course it's become a little more popular. In those days there was a Silva Ultramind, which recently
Yes.
Vishen, in fact, was so influenced by it as a teenager, that many years later he bought the rights to Silva. So Jose
Mm.
Silva passed away a couple of years ago, or maybe
Yeah.
more. But like, he was able to buy the rights and therefore to
Mhm.
use it in um, in helping people, in working with people, teaching people. So these are all, it's like, so in simple terms, it's like one was more energy based, one was more language based, and I've just been imbibing it. And I know that it's like, when you're as an artist, you just keep getting better with, it's like, with time, as you keep painting, it just flows more and more. So that's where I'm at today. And yeah, it's uh, for those of you who are still, if especially if you're here right now at this point in the pod, listening and watching, um, it is definitely a fulfilling journey. um, and like with, like, any great athlete or any great performer, you can't do it alone, right?
Mm.
It's really beneficial to be able to have other people that believe in your vision. And I'll also say one more thing here, which today I'm able to sort of say in so many words. I didn't know it at that point. I didn't have the words for it earlier. But the good news is, today we talk a lot about service. We talk a lot about,
Mhm.
uh, you know, doing this in service of, or helping to help other people. I think that also makes a big difference. It's, yes, you want to be able to make that transition to earn the same kind of money or more, right? 100%. There's no two ways about that. But interestingly, it's like, you know, when you flip, as they say, you flip the pyramid and you're looking at it more from a place of, like, how can I help many more people, right? Which is kind of, again, going back to the ikigai. If you're able to more and more find something in what you're doing that can reach more people, then you'll kind of like get to that sweet spot, right? So if I was to sort of, distill these last 2 decades, these last 20 plus years of being on the journey, definitely uh, realizing more and more that, like, how can I help more people? And that's why, as just as an add-on, as a bonus, uh, highly recommended that, especially if you're somebody thinking of getting into the space of healing and coaching, meaning you want to help more people, and especially from a coaching perspective, like you want to have a business of what you're doing versus working for somebody else. um, it's so important to also learn skills, and one of those is definitely, today we talk about personal branding, we talk about marketing, building a funnel. Like, these are things that, even till, like, 4 5 years ago, I didn't know it as a system, right? But I've come to realize, if I it's like, I don't do the what if. I'm saying the one thing I would, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and I would make sure that I started studying, how to generate leads, how to have a funnel, like 20 years ago. If there's one thing that I would change on the journey, this would be it.
And okay, so because like you you have explained so beautifully your journey, and it's been very positive. But when
Mm.
you're living the journey,
Hmm.
there are many challenges, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
what kind of challenges have you faced, and what was it, or what support did you expect and get, or expect did not get?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. um, So one is definitely the expectation itself, right? To
Mhm.
put it into context, 20 plus years ago, when I heard any kind of, you know, uh, do this program and you can change your life in 2 days, I didn't
Mm.
believe it then. And I
Mm.
understand what role that plays today, right? Especially more so today when, Facebook exists, and that's a far a louder vehicle, a louder loudspeaker, if you want to call it that, to be able to get people's attention, right? Back in the day, you would have to take posters or run ads in papers. So, in simple words, I'm saying, um, I've been, like I said a little while ago, I've been very blessed to have some really amazing teachers. So
teachers.
asking for that help is very, very vital. Um, but also keep, like, sort of like, rule of thumb is, know that some of it will not work for
Mm,
you right now.
mm,
So, when you join programs or courses or even masterminds for that matter, it may not work in the way that you think it'll work,
mm,
right? So just
mm,
because you're spending thousands or lakhs, even for that matter, in a
mhm,
course, that's not a guarantee. And that's something I learned firsthand. I finally learned that lesson, which is, um, to not have the casino mindset,
mm.
which is, hey, I'm paying the money, right? So that means I should get it. That's not how it works. Because especially when it
I
comes
love
to
this word.
coaching, right? When it comes to
Yeah.
coaching, just because you're paying somebody 20,000, 50,000, 1 lakh a month, that is not a guarantee that you will suddenly, have a viable, or a, I'm talking primarily for people who are in the coaching space, right?
Mm,
It's not necessary that you will have a viable business,
mm,
right? There are more factors than that, and sometimes, and we all have different sort of beliefs. For me, I realized this the hard way, that somewhere I had kind of taken on that attitude or mindset that, oh, if I'm paying this, it will work,
mhm.
right? There's still work to be
Rahul,
done.
one second. One second.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
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 So
So you were talking about
yeah.
the challenges.
So, like I said, the one is, be extremely aware and mindful that this is the journey, right? Which means, nobody knows how your journey is going to end up. As in, are you going to sort of like there are some people, so for example, if you belong to any community, in the context specifically when we talk about coaching, you'll see people having different levels of success at different points. So somebody may just join like yesterday, meaning 1 month ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and suddenly they're kind of like seeing success that you want, right? The realization here is that they have been able to tap into something that's uh, unique to them, or that is in sync with them. And in your case, it's just another reminder that it's like that, mera number, not mera number kab aayega. It's like, it will come. That's the point.
Mm,
Because if you ask me, that is one very, very important element to keep in mind, so that you're
mm,
able to actually, last the, like, go the course, like stay the course, rather, not even go the course, but stay the course. Because in this kind of work, when you want to find a different career, it's very easy to give up,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, these are like two very important sort of mindsets to keep in mind.
Yeah.
It's like you
And
can't buy success. You can't buy it's like degrees, right? Even if you buy
true.
your degree, that doesn't mean anything beyond a point.
Yeah. So
Mm.
if somebody today would come to you and say, Rahul,
Hmm.
I want to start this journey. I have not done anything, but I am
Correct.
intrigued by this field of coaching,
Mm. Mm.
and I am coming in with the zone that I want to learn and expand, and also help people. So
Correct.
what in what way could you chart, like if you could want to give them a roadmap, like
Correct.
you do
So
this or this.
yeah,
The
yeah.
mindset thing was absolutely beautiful that you mentioned,
Mm.
because I know
Mm.
that that is the mindset that people go, and that is why
Correct.
they feel very disheartened that things are not
Correct.
moving or things are not
Correct.
happening.
Exactly.
uh, yeah, thanks for touching upon that. But
Mm.
and not but uh,
Mm.
what like what what would you tell somebody who's new and
Exactly.
wants to explore this
So
path?
in a practical way, it, because of course today if I say ikigai, there's enough reference material, right?
Hmm.
Like 10 years ago, people weren't really talking about. I don't even know if the book was out then, as in the
Hmm.
written book
Hmm.
was out and available. I'm not
I
very
don't
sure,
think so.
but yeah. But the point is that that's a simple assessment tool, because if you're saying you want to help people, it's useful. And this is something I learned a couple of years ago, 2016, so that makes it 8 years ago.
Hmm.
Rather than rushing to just create a website or a, an offering or whatever it is, in the early phase it's okay for you to test out with multiple, things that you can do, that you love doing or enjoy doing, and that, people relate to. Because once you realize that, okay, of these 3 4 things, this one thing keeps coming back, right? That will give you the sort of input to okay, what do I do next, or how much more of this can I do? That's what I would say. And also the mindset of, what you're doing is you're building something which is going to become possibly a lifestyle,
Hmm.
which means you're not sort of like, huh, okay, I did this, 2 years done, now on to the next thing, like you were asking when we started, right? Like, is it like you're looking for something new because the old has kind of, it's run its course? So it's like if somebody is a doctor and they're like, I don't feel that. Like classic example, and this is from a resource point of view also,
Hmm.
for people who are watching this, definitely watch and listen to Ali Abdal, right? Somebody who's,
Yeah.
hmm.
So sorry, the flow got disturbed.
No, no,
You
that's
were
okay.
saying
So
something.
just to recap, I'm saying, as an example, when you, let's say, for example, if you look at Ali Abdal, who's like this Cambridge or Oxford, I forget where he came
Hmm.
from. He's a
Hmm.
UK doctor,
Hmm.
and today he's like one of the successful. Like
Yeah.
if you Google, you'll find enough and more,
Yeah. No.
right?
No.
Or
I
on
know.
YouTube,
Yeah.
correct.
I've
So I'm
watched
saying,
him.
as an example, that as long as you're like, okay, I love doing something up to the point when I don't, or I can't, or I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore, and
Hmm.
you are willing to explore another avenue. Now of course in his case he did the other version, which was he ran both together, meaning he had this
Yeah.
thing
For
on the
many
side.
years. Yeah. For many years.
Exactly. So that's why I'm not saying follow my model to the T, because it may or it may not work for you, right?
Yeah.
But the key is that, as long as you recognize that whatever you're doing next is a journey and it will run its course, it may be 3 years, 5 years, or maybe 20, or like for the rest of your life, that's what you're doing, right? There's no, it's not necessary that, that this thing that you're intending to do, the second career, that it has a sort of finite timeline to it. It may be the one that you do for the rest of your life. And as we were, I think, talking just before we began, that the world is changing so much that maybe in 5 years' time, you may end up doing something different because the market has changed. It's like, AI has kind of created a lot of new perspectives to certain jobs, right?
Hmm.
So that would be one way to answer the question, which is, um, be open to resources, and also, the inner resource, so like asking those questions.
Mm. And I know, like, with you in your program, do you want to elaborate, because you have a very
Sure.
beautiful setup of a community? You have
Mm,
a program that helps healers and coaches, and also
yeah,
you do one-on-one consulting or coaching,
yeah.
teaching. So, just could you also tell, like, what
Sure,
are things
sure.
available if somebody wants to learn from you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things that I learned sort of in reverse, which is after all these years, uh, is if you're intending to do any kind of coaching, or even healing for that matter, or sort of like even maybe even a blend of the two, um, having a community, building a community, and then, you know, taking care of the community is actually, if you ask me, the main that's the main that's the main thing,
mm,
right? If I go back in time, last 5, 7, 8, 10 years or more, that wasn't really my core, and maybe it's if make the linkage, I did mainly corporate training. In corporate training, the concept of a community didn't really exist, because you
mm,
go to each company, you work with their employees for maybe a day or maybe 2 days, right? Maybe if you're on a project that's for 6 months or a year, you may build a rapport, but otherwise there's no community where all these people show up. So one of the things that I have learned now, with all after all the experiments, is that at the earliest, start to build your community and grow that community, meaning, like, really truly, like, and again, I understand this, that for a lot of people it may be overwhelming, a lot of people it may not be of interest. But if you're truly intending to do something, which is the whole ikigai concept, right? If you're intending to do something for other people, I was listening to this the other day. One of the meanings is like you're excited to wake up and do the work.
mm.
That is the concept of ikigai. How does it happen? When you have like the connection of all four, right? Something that you like doing, something that you're good at doing, something that people want, and what is the fourth one? I think, which is of service to them, something to that effect,
That pays you also.
and that
That
pays,
pays you.
right? Exactly. So, like, what people want, meaning they actually want it, and
Mm,
the fourth element, which is the most important part from a business point of view, that they're willing to pay
mm,
for it, right? So, a major part of that is actually building community. So, as you said, I have now finally I have like a formalized sense where there's like technology on the back end as well. I have what's called the iHypnosis community.
community.
So that is something where people can come in, and now I've reached that point where every week, Mondays and Fridays at 6 p.m. we do a session.
Mhm,
My way of helping people, it's like sometimes I talk about it, it's like a satsang, but not, meaning it's not, there's no religious perspective to it, it's not even sort of overtly spiritual, but because it's the blend of what I'm using and maybe part of who I am as a person as well, it is definitely exploring some of these threads of life, right? Could
mm,
be like just we are on, what is it, today's Tuesday.
mm,
Yesterday, strangely enough, or not so strange, but no surprise, yesterday we were talking about purpose
mm,
and the energy of purpose, right? So it's not just having a conversation with the group, but actually leading them through processes to be able to tap into that energy, right? So that they actually get replenished into these threads of life. And we cover different aspects, like, there's the positive, there's the negative. Like, what does a block mean to you?
mm,
And how do we sort of undo that? Where from a block it becomes, it's like, what's your life beyond a block? That would be, let's say, for example, a theme for a particular session that we do. And
mhm,
it's teaching them some skills. It's and so Mondays and Fridays is called the iHypnosis experience, right?
mhm.
So it's literally giving them an experience rather than me just talking at them for like an hour or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So there's the community aspect. And then, of course, now what's also kind of happened as a consequence is, like, after all these years of traveling the world, learning from literally the best in the
Best.
world,
Yeah.
especially in the context of hypnosis and NLP.
And
Today, I also teach that. So I have a separate division called the IHNLP Practitioner Program. So it's the
mm-hmm,
IHNLP Coaching Academy, and the program
mm-hmm.
is called the IHNLP Practitioner Program.
Practitioner.
So
Mm-hmm,
that is something like, for folks who are, let's say, on the journey of, oh, I want to do NLP, right?
mm-hmm.
What I'm offering is a combination of NLP and
And
hypnosis.
hypnosis.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
third aspect is basically the coaching, which is typically it's one to one, but I also do some amount of group coaching. So group coaching is blended into the practitioner program, but otherwise, of course, I see and I work with people one on one as well. So these are like the broad areas in which um, I'm able to help people. And having said this, as I was sharing earlier about marketing and sales and leads and things like, and funnels, I've invested pretty heavily in not just time but money and coaches over the last couple of years. So there's a fair bit of knowing that I have when it comes to building business, which I blend into the coaching itself, right? So it's
Mhm.
not the conventional business coaching. So I don't uh, promote myself as a business coach, right?
Mhm.
But there are aspects that I know which somebody who's on the journey, as you said, it's like that person may be a few steps, or I may
Mhm.
have already walked a few more steps ahead or a few miles ahead, right? Because like I said, from around COVID, I really took it seriously, and I like, really immersed myself into it. And so today there's a lot more that, I understand, and so I can help other people that are on the journey.
Yeah. And as coaches and as trainers, we
Hmm.
also, we focus a lot on our own skill building. So, are you
Mm.
learning something new, or
Constantly,
how does that happen?
constantly,
How do you make time
constantly.
for that,
So
or how do you do that?
correct. So that's part of what I do every year, right? So whether it is hypnosis, hypnotherapy, one of my favorite subjects is conversational hypnosis, right?
Hypnosis.
So it's like like normally when we talk about hypnosis, a lot of people will give you probably their 10-second version of some movie that they've seen,
Mhm.
and some form of hypnosis being induced, right?
True.
uh, but for me it's like beyond just the conventional. I'm looking at the conversation, which is without necessarily telling somebody, oh, you close your eyes and then go into you are now sleepy, or whatever is like the conventional way that people have learned this. So what I'm constantly working on is both the like, let's say, um, the overt way of doing it, which means you'll know that I'm doing
Yes.
hypnosis. The other is more the conversational, which means
Conversation.
it's the questions, it's the frames that will help somebody kind of let that grip that they have on their current limitation, and then just for a moment explore like we did as kids, right? Explore the other world, the world of possibility, the world of, like we said, they're transitioning to something else. So what's that world like? How are people talking to you there, right? What are your neighbors telling you in that universe, in that world? And it's sort of like engaging them at that level, so that they are able to kind of build that inner belief that yes, I can do it, right? So to answer your question, yes, I every year I make it a point to keep brushing up my skills. Whether it's self hypnosis, it's hypnosis, like these are the core in the recent years, and over and above this, definitely also like whether it's the sales, the marketing, like I said, like the first 10, 12, 15 years, give or take, my focus was more on the content. Like I really want to
Mhm.
be able to
The
deliver something
skills.
of
Yeah.
value, and the skills that are required for it. Over the last couple of years, the last 3 to 5 years, I've definitely focused more on the marketing and the sales side. And today, what I'm looking at is a blend of the two.
But and also just to reiterate the
Hmm.
point that until you have the content, you cannot do the
Oh yeah, yeah,
you know
100%,
you have
hundred
to be
percent,
very good in your content, and it
hundred
is a
percent.
journey, and it's a journey. It's not yeah, it's like
Yeah,
not there is no
like
shortcut to this.
exactly.
There's
And
no
even
shortcut.
like even when I teach my students, I make it a point to remind them that what I'm teaching you and the way I'm teaching you is so that you are practically able to do it. You're able to
Hmm.
demonstrate it. It's one thing to talk about, techniques, or to
Hmm.
teach the technique to somebody. Do this, then this, and this, and this. The question is, can you do it yourself? Because that was what I learned when I was a student,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Looks like we might have gone. Hmm.
No, no, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Right. So I'm saying
and
that was something I learned as a student, and so I make it a point to remind my students that whatever you're learning, make sure that you're able, like, get to that point of fluency.
hmm. And
So
also
people are then able to experience it. Hmm.
and also to adding to the point where you talked about having a community, I feel even before wanting or to build a community, I feel become a part of some communities and
Oh
become
yes,
so that your journey
100%.
doesn't be a lonely, because this is a lone journey. So just try and it's helpful for people to become part of
Yeah.
something else,
Yeah.
to at least know what they want to do it or how they want to do it. So
Correct.
you can, your process also
Yeah.
comes from what you see, what you like, what you don't like,
Exactly.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
the coaching space or even going
Mm.
on the journey of learning is a very solo journey kind of. It's not like
Correct. Correct.
it's not like you're in a big classroom and you know everybody is doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this conversation has been so helpful because you brought out so many new things. The main thing which I loved with you was what you said about the casino mindset. Like we
Mm.
have this thing where we say that just because we have paid, we want the returns.
Yeah.
But then, yeah,
Correct.
but then to become the person who gets the returns of that is a journey, is the journey rather.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that word. I never
Thank
knew
you so much
the
as
word. Yeah,
well.
and yeah, and you literally capsuled. We could capsule your whole 20 years journey in an hour or so. And this has been
My
such a
pleasure.
great, learning, understanding experience
Mm.
for, I'm sure for people who watch it, but definitely for me. And thank you so much for doing this,
Nice.
Rahul.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me. And my belief is that, whether it's one person or one group of people, doesn't matter. It's like I know that somewhere, like, this message is reaching, like literally reaching you, that thought of this, like, hey, I want to be able to get another perspective. So that's what drives me to come and to share like this. Like, I've also made it a point to do a daily pod. So I've been now
Yeah,
doing a video a day for more than 700
more than a
plus
year.
days,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Since like
It's 2 years
October of
now.
2022. Yeah, October
Okay.
2022. So we are in September, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Technically now
Okay.
it's 2 years.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's beautiful. And yes, so that is important. The consistency, the
Mm,
showing up for yourself, showing up for your community, and yeah, and creating something or become a part of something where you're not
mm,
lonely and you
correct.
continue the journey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rahul.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. And wish you all the best, Kavita,
Thank
on
you.
your journey. And may you have more and more amazing guests who add value to your community that you're building. So, all the best.
Thank you.